The Munsters, 1964 to 1966, captured the hearts of audiences with its unique blend of comedy, charm, and spooky family fun. While the show lives on as a beloved cult classic, the real-life stories of the cast members are far more complex, and in many cases, deeply tragic. In this video, we take a closer look at the lives behind the laughter, exploring the personal struggles, quiet heartbreaks, and untimely passings of those who helped make the show unforgettable. It's a tribute to the faces behind the ghoulish makeup and a reflection on the bittersweet legacy of a show that brought so much joy to the world. Fred Gwyn was born on July 10, 1926, and took on the role of Herman Munster in 1964 at the age of 38, embodying the towering, green-skinned Frankenstein figure who, despite his fearsome appearance, exuded warmth, innocence, and a deep desire to be accepted. Although the success of the Munsters made him a household name, Fred's acting career suffered terribly from typecasting. His towering frame and signature role haunted him, costing him numerous serious roles he desperately wanted. After the Munsters, he struggled through years of being overlooked and ridiculed, taking minor television parts and voiceover work that brought little fulfillment. In his personal life, Fred married Jean Foxy Reynard and they had 5 children together, but their marriage grew strained and emotionally distant, eventually leading to a bitter divorce. One of his sons, Dylan, drowned in the family pool at age 1, an event that shattered Fred and led to years of silent suffering and guilt. He battled chronic depression and withdrew from Hollywood entirely, finding temporary solace in painting and writing children's books, though these were met with little critical acclaim. Deeply lonely in his later years, he lived a reclusive life in Maryland, burdened by the shadows of fame and the weight of personal loss. Fred Gwyn died on July 2, 1993, at the age of 66 from pancreatic cancer. Ivonne De Carlo, born on September 1, 1922, embraced the role of Lily Munster in 1964 at the age of 42, becoming the glamorous yet hauntingly nurturing vampire matriarch whose beauty and poise gave the show an eerie elegance. Known for her roles in Technicolor adventures and biblical epics before the Munsters, Yvonne's casting in a comedic horror series was seen as a step down from her earlier stardom. Her once promising film career faded into B-movies and television cameos, leaving her disillusioned and typecast. Behind the camera, her personal life crumbled. She married stuntman Bob Morgan and had 2 sons, Bruce and Michael, but her marriage was strained by infidelity and Morgan's devastating on-set accident, which left him partially disabled. Yvonne became his caretaker and sole provider, sacrificing her career for the sake of her family. Her son struggled with addiction and legal trouble, compounding her sorrow. Financial pressures forced her to work far past her prime, and she was often seen begging for roles or reduced to voiceovers. She battled chronic health problems, including strokes and heart issues, which left her partially incapacitated. In her final years, she lived in near poverty, shunned by an industry she once dazzled. Ivonne De Carlo passed away on January 8, 2007, at the age of 84 from heart failure. Al Lewis was born on April 30, 1923, and stepped into the shoes of Grandpa Munster in 1964 when he was 41 years old. He portrayed the quirky, vampire-like inventor with boundless energy and wit, whose bubbling potions and mischievous grin made him a fan favorite. While he played a character full of life, Al's real-life struggles were anything but light-hearted. His acting career had modest peaks before the Munsters, but afterward, roles became scarce, and he was often reduced to caricatures or political oddities. He turned to activism, even running for governor of New York in a last-ditch effort to remain relevant, though he was more mocked than taken seriously. In his personal life, Al married Marge Redmond and had 3 sons, but his marriage was marred by long separations and constant ideological clashes that led to a quiet, painful divorce. His relationship with his children became strained as he threw himself into activism and away from home. Financial instability plagued him, forcing him into small-time radio gigs and restaurant ventures that failed. One of his most painful tragedies was being forced to sell treasured memorabilia and property just to afford healthcare in his later years. Battling loneliness and public indifference, he clung to fan conventions for validation. Al Lewis died on February 3, 2006, at the age of 82 from natural causes. Harvey Corman was born on February 15, 1927, and began portraying Dr. Leinbach in 1964 at the age of 37, appearing as a bewildered and often overwhelmed medical professional who stumbled through encounters with the Munsters' peculiar world. Harvey's career initially flourished in television comedy, especially on The Carol Burnett Show, where his talent for sketch and parody became legendary. But behind the laughter, Harvey carried the deep scars of an insecure childhood raised by emotionally distant immigrant parents who disapproved of his pursuit of acting. Despite fame, he struggled with crippling self-doubt and a yearning for validation that never came. He married twice, first to Donna Eller, with whom he had 2 children, Maria and Christopher, but their marriage ended in bitterness and estrangement. His second marriage to Deborah Fritz was quieter but never quite filled the emotional void left by the first. Harvey battled chronic health issues and debilitating bouts of depression, worsened by his son's descent into substance abuse and legal trouble. Professionally, the 1980s brought fewer roles, and he found himself increasingly irrelevant in a fast-changing entertainment world. He died on May 29, 2008, at the age of 81, from complications following a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm. Paul Lynn was born on June 13, 1926, and assumed the role of Dr. Edward Dudley in 1964 at age 38, playing a fast-talking, eccentric physician whose confused reactions to the Munsters added to the show's satirical charm. His character was brief but memorable, offering a glimpse of Paul's signature blend of sarcasm and flamboyant energy. Though widely adored for his quick wit and presence on Hollywood squares, Lynn's career was shadowed by Hollywood's intolerance toward his sexuality, forcing him to remain closeted throughout his life. This secrecy became a heavy burden, fueling a life of loneliness and addiction. His most intimate relationship ended in disaster when his partner, actor James Davidson, tragically fell from a hotel balcony during a violent argument, an event that haunted Paul for the rest of his life. He never married and had no children, and his relationships were often fleeting, secretive, and fraught with fear. His off-stage personality clashed with his public image. Friends recalled his alcoholism, explosive temper, and frequent breakdowns. By the late 1970s, work became scarce, and Paul's erratic behavior made him difficult to hire. His once promising career withered into voice roles and forgettable guest appearances. Paul Lynn died alone on January 10, 1982, at the age of 55 from a heart attack. Jon Keredine was born on February 5, 1906, and took on the role of Mr. Gateman in 1965 at the age of 59, playing Herman Munster's ominous boss at the funeral home, a role that leaned into his naturally macabre presence and gothic persona. Mr. Gateman was an embodiment of the show's dark humor, cold and dignified, a man at ease among coffins and corpses. Keredine's career was vast and uneven. He worked with legendary directors like John Ford but later appeared in countless low-budget horror films just to survive financially. Married 4 times, his personal life was deeply chaotic. His marriage to Arden Elmacool produced sons David, Robert, and Keith, who would all follow him into acting, each one bearing scars from their father's emotional volatility and frequent absences. Jon drank heavily, struggled with financial ruin multiple times, and was often reported as living out of hotels or sleeping in his car between gigs. Though he loved his children, he was a distant and unpredictable father. In his later years, he suffered from both mental and physical decline, relying on roles in increasingly exploitative horror films to afford basic needs. He died on November 27, 1988, at the age of 82 from heart and kidney failure, largely forgotten by the industry that once revered him, marking the end of a long, tortured journey. Jon Feedler, born on February 3, 1925, began portraying Warren Bloom in 1964 at the age of 39, slipping into the role of a meek, soft-spoken man frequently ensnared in the Munsters' supernatural chaos. Feedler's character embodied the nervous everyman, a gentle soul overwhelmed by the absurd, much like Feedler himself. Best known as the voice of Piglet in Disney's Winnie the Pooh franchise, Jon had a prolific but unglamorous career in radio, film, and TV. Despite his achievements, he never attained stardom and often spoke of feeling invisible both professionally and personally. A lifelong bachelor, Jon lived alone in a modest New York apartment, where the walls were lined with books and old scripts but echoed with silence. Rumors swirled about his sexuality, which he never addressed publicly, choosing instead to retreat into work. The death of his younger brother from leukemia devastated him, and he remained emotionally guarded thereafter. He spent much of his later life caring for his aging mother, and after her death, he became even more reclusive, rarely seen except when working. Chronic illness crept into his final decade, including a long battle with cancer that he kept secret from almost everyone. Jon Feedler died on June 25, 2005, at the age of 80, from cancer, passing quietly and alone, his final breath nearly as soft as the voice that had brought Piglet to life. Jane Withers was born on April 12, 1926, and began portraying Fanny Pike in 1964 at the age of 38, a character whose quirky charm and comic energy added levity to the eerie ambience of the Munsters. As Fanny, Jane brought brightness and chaos, a whirlwind of personality against the gloomy backdrop of the Munster household. Once hailed as one of the brightest child stars of the 1930s, Jane's early fame was both a blessing and a curse. By the time she took on Fanny Pike, she was already considered a relic of a bygone era, fighting to reclaim relevance. Her marriage to Texas oilman William Moss ended in quiet tragedy, though they had 3 children, including Randy and Kendall. The family life she yearned for disintegrated after years of emotional distance, infidelity, and her husband's mounting gambling debts. She later married Kenneth Herrera of the 4 Freshmen, but he tragically died in a plane crash, leaving her widowed and emotionally shattered. Jane spent years battling depression and retreated from the public eye, dedicating herself to porcelain doll collecting and religious charities, a stark contrast to her former glamorous image. Though she occasionally returned to voice work and made rare public appearances, her days were filled more with silence than applause. Jane Withers died on August 7, 2021, at the age of 95 from natural causes. Val Avery was born on July 14, 1924, and took on the role of Marty in The Munsters in 1964 at the age of 40. As Marty, he played a character who was often overwhelmed and confused by the eccentricity and gothic absurdity of the Munster household, embodying the voice of the normal world clashing with the surreal family. His acting career, however, was far from consistent. Though he appeared in over 100 films and television shows, he was often relegated to supporting roles, never breaking into stardom despite his talent. His life was riddled with rejection and typecasting, and while critics praised his range, Hollywood never fully embraced him. In his personal life, Val married actress Margot Stevenson, but their union was tumultuous. Though they had one daughter named Linnea, their marriage was plagued by infidelity and long periods of separation due to Val's work demands and personal demons. The home was a battleground of silence, with Val frequently withdrawing emotionally. Later in life, he suffered 2 major nervous breakdowns, one in the 1970s after being blacklisted for political activism, and another in the 1980s after a failed suicide attempt. Despite his tough exterior on screen, Val was haunted by self-doubt and chronic insomnia that led to a dependency on alcohol and sleeping pills. He died on December 12, 2009, at the age of 85, due to heart failure. Chet Stratton, born on July 31, 1910, entered the world of the Munsters in 1964 at the age of 54, portraying Clyde Thornton, a character who served as a bewildered foil to the Munsters' oddities. Though his screen time was limited, his contribution added a vital layer of normalcy to contrast the family's gothic eccentricities. Behind the scenes, however, Chet's career was marked by bitter compromise. Once a stage actor of some repute in the 1930s and 40s, he found himself relegated to minor roles in sitcoms and commercials, humiliated by the disparity between his dreams and reality. He never married, and it was long rumored he was involved in a string of closeted relationships at a time when being openly gay would have ended his career entirely. The isolation was palpable. He lived alone for most of his adult life and rarely spoke of family or friends. Battling alcoholism and undiagnosed depression, Chet was known to disappear from sets for days, only to return gaunt and despondent. In his later years, he was virtually forgotten by the industry, scraping by on residuals and working part-time as a drama coach to students who had no idea he had once been on television. Chet Stratton died on July 7, 1970, at the age of 59 from a heart attack, his body found alone in his small Los Angeles apartment, a tragic final curtain for a man who had once dreamed of Broadway stardom. Beverly Owen was born on May 13, 1937, and began playing the role of Marilyn Munster in 1964 at age 27, portraying the radiant, sweet-natured normal niece in a household of monsters, whose human beauty ironically made her the family's oddball. While the role seemed light and whimsical, Beverly's time on the show was short-lived and tragic. Deeply unhappy on set, she felt creatively stifled and emotionally detached from her character. Though the Munsters brought her recognition, she was quietly replaced after 15 episodes, her departure shrouded in rumors of depression. She married writer and producer Jon Stone, and they had 2 daughters, Polly and Kate, but the marriage deteriorated as Jon's career soared and Beverly's faded into obscurity. Feeling invisible in both her home and the industry, she withdrew entirely from acting, and academia became her last refuge. She earned a master's degree in early American history but never returned to the spotlight. Her withdrawal from public life wasn't just a career shift, it was an escape from unspoken grief. She suffered multiple miscarriages and, later, estrangement from her youngest daughter due to mental health issues in the family. Years of untreated depression and anxiety compounded her isolation. Beverly Owen died on February 21, 2019, at the age of 81 from ovarian cancer. Willis Bouchi was born on May 24, 1907, and portrayed Mr. Bradley in The Munsters in 1965 when he was 58 years old. Mr. Bradley, a reserved and occasionally uptight character, served as a contrast to the free-spirited, monstrous antics of the Munsters, offering a dry comedic foil to their otherworldly charm. Willis had a voice of authority and a face made for playing officials, which often landed him roles as judges, military men, and politicians, yet rarely ones that allowed him emotional depth. His career spanned over 3 decades, but most of it remained in the shadows of larger stars. His dreams of leading man status were crushed early on, particularly after being fired from a 1950s pilot that could have made him a household name. Bouchi married once, to a woman named Eleanor, who left him after 15 years, citing emotional neglect and infidelity. They had no children. He spent the remainder of his life largely alone, avoiding the spotlight he once desperately chased. 2 of his closest friends died by suicide, which deeply affected him and caused a long spiral into depression. He also suffered a financial crisis in the early 1970s after being defrauded by a manager, forcing him into bit parts just to keep food on the table. A recluse in his final years, Willis died on September 27, 1977, from heart failure at the age of 70. Clare Carlton, born on September 28, 1913, began portraying Yolanda Cribbins in 1964 at the age of 51. As Yolanda, she brought flair and intrigue to the show, her character oozing with sly humor and a touch of melancholy, which many believe mirrored Clare's own life. Her film career began promisingly in the 1930s, yet she quickly found herself stuck in uncredited roles or typecast as morally questionable women, a far cry from the grand aspirations she once held when she left her abusive household at 17 to pursue Hollywood dreams. Clare never married, but she had a long and scandal-ridden affair with a married producer, which ended in heartbreak when he refused to leave his family. She became pregnant once but tragically miscarried, and never had another child. Rumors swirled about her mental health, and she spent several months in psychiatric care in the 1950s after a breakdown on set. The last decade of her life was marked by solitude and bitterness. She was found more often in dive bars than on sound stages. In her final years, Clare battled cancer privately, refusing help and pushing away the few friends who remained. She died on December 11, 1979, from cancer, alone in a small Los Angeles apartment, at the age of 66. Jon Hoyt, born on October 5, 1905, stepped into the role of Barney Walters in 1964 at age 59. Barney was a character who found himself confused and often unsettled by the bizarre yet oddly endearing world of the Munsters, mirroring the audience's own sense of disbelief. Hoyt's presence was commanding, a veteran actor of both screen and stage who carried himself with the solemnity of a Shakespearean tragedian. Though he enjoyed relative success, his career was one of constant uphill battles. He longed to be remembered as a great actor but was perennially cast as villains or cold authority figures. His most lauded performances came in stage productions that are now largely forgotten. Off-screen, Hoyt's personal life was scarred by sadness. He married once in 1933 to a costume designer named Lillian, who left him after their only child, Daniel, died from leukemia at age 8, a loss that shattered them both. They never recovered, and Hoyt never remarried. He was known to spend nights alone, staring at old photographs, whispering lines from plays he once performed. He suffered 2 strokes in the 1980s, leaving him partially paralyzed and unable to act. The man who once memorized entire scripts could no longer read a page. He passed away on September 15, 1991, from lung cancer at the age of 85. Marge Redmond was born on December 14, 1924, and took on the role of Miss Hazlitt in 1965 at the age of 41. Miss Hazlitt was a schoolteacher whose prim, traditional demeanor clashed amusingly with the unconventional Munster family, adding levity through contrast. Redmond was best known for her role as Sister Jacqueline in The Flying Nun, but her career was haunted by near misses and what-ifs. She was repeatedly considered for leading roles only to be passed over at the last minute, including one particularly devastating instance when a studio replaced her with a younger actress after she'd already filmed the pilot. Her marriage to actor Jack Weston lasted for decades but was riddled with tension, professional jealousy, and long separations. They had no children, partly by choice, partly because of a miscarriage in the late 1950s that she never emotionally recovered from. Despite staying together until his death, the relationship was emotionally distant in later years. Redmond was plagued by obsessive-compulsive disorder, a condition that left her isolated and withdrawn during periods of stress. She also suffered a nervous breakdown in the early 1970s, retreating entirely from public life for several years. Though she lived long, her later years were marked by silence and reclusion. Marge passed away on February 10, 2020, from natural causes at the age of 95. Who is your favorite character in the Munsters? How do you feel knowing that the actors have passed away? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss future videos. Thank you so much.